Is there genocide in South Africa, or is this just another political narrative? Senator Chris Van Hollen confronts a U.S. ambassador nominee over a controversial claim pushed by Donald Trump, and the answers quickly turn into a tense moment on Capitol Hill.
Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bazell, in February of this year, President Trump made the legally and morally absurd claim that the government of South Africa was engaged in genocide against Afrikaners there. And if confirmed, you, of course, would be our ambassador to South Africa. So I have a pretty straightforward question. Do you agree that that claim was absurd?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. My answer to you is this. If you were to talk to those people who are involved, they fear...
Mr. Bazell, I'm sorry. Genocide is a legally defined issue. No. It's not a question of someone's impression. There's a legal definition for it. To your knowledge, has the State Department legal advisor concluded that the government of South Africa is engaged in genocide?
Senator, I don't know that answer, but Senator...
No, it's a straightforward question. I'm not going to... It's a straightforward question. There's a legal definition of genocide. I want to know if you agree that that's an absurd claim made by the President of the United States.
Senator, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't address it that way.
The President, of course, is reported to be engaged right now in reducing the number of refugees that can come into the United States to something around 7,500. And that the overwhelming majority of those would be Afrikaners, white South Africans. That, in my view, is a gross misuse of our policies. Do you agree that we should not have a refugee policy, admission policy, that's based on race?
Senator, in South Africa...
No, I'm asking you if we should have a refugee admission policy based on race. Again, it's a simple question, sir.
Senator, I'm trying to answer it.
Yes or no? Should we have one based on race?
In South Africa, you have thousands of attacks that have taken place against white farmers. They fear for their lives. What the president is saying is that they can come to the United States as refugees if they fear for their lives.
Right. So that's not an answer to my question. There is a legal criteria for people being admitted to the United States. My question was that based on reports, very credible reports, the Trump administration is talking about making it a cap worldwide of refugees and making almost all of them Afrikaners, white South Africans. I know you don't want to answer the question. That sounds like a race-based refugee
Senator, I can't
policy.
answer. I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. I'm not privy to that. I don't know the answer.
Do you agree?
I don't know the answer about camps.
This is a question. It's apart from South Africa. Do you believe we should have a race-based refugee admissions policy? Yes or no?
I believe that in South Africa...
No, that wasn't my question. You're going to be a representative of the United States overseas if you're confirmed.
But my focus,
let me go
Senator,
on. The whole issue of South Africa is not new to you. And back in the 1980s, I happened to be a staff member on this committee when this committee passed the comprehensive anti-apartheid legislation, sanctions against South Africa. As I look at your comments from that period, you were not supportive of that effort. Is that a fair characterization of your statement? I'm being very broad.
I'm not aware of what you did, Senator, but I can tell you what our position was as conservatives back in the 1980s. ANC and Nelson Mandela at that time were aligned with the Soviet Union, which was the biggest threat to peace in the world and the mortal enemy of the United States. As such, we were in opposition.
Okay.
I think, Senator, at the same time, it's an extraordinary evolution that 10 years later, approximately, when the wall came down and that association ended, so too did the relationship that the conservative movement had with Nelson Mandela. If I'm asked today, who do I think is the most revered person in South Africa? Who do I have the most respect for? It would be Nelson Mandela.
Okay, because you've criticized others for what you call sort of the glorification of Nelson Mandela, as you know. So it's interesting to hear that statement today. Let me just say in closing, I think at that time you worked with then Senator Jesse Helms to have a hearing that actually objected to the Reagan administration's decision to send an emissary to meet with the ANC. That was after this committee on a bipartisan basis, led by Senator Lugar, passed the sanctions bill. I think you probably were very strongly opposed to that bill, but in my view, that bill was one of the great things this committee did on a bipartisan basis, and that helped bring apartheid to an end. And people who oppose that have to live with the idea that there could still be an apartheid regime in South Africa today, but for that legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
One of the most striking moments from this hearing came when Senator Chris Van Hollen pressed a nominee for U.S. ambassador to South Africa over a claim that has circulated in right-wing political circles for years. The idea that white Afrikaner farmers in South Africa are victims of genocide. Van Hollen immediately grounded the discussion in something that often gets lost in political rhetoric, the actual definition of genocide. Under international law, genocide isn't a vague feeling or a political slogan. It is a very specific legal category, defined in the Genocide Convention as acts committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. That definition matters because accusations of genocide are among the most serious claims that can be made in international politics. When a U.S. president uses that term, it carries enormous diplomatic consequences. It can affect foreign relations, refugee policy, international sanctions, and even military intervention debates. That's why Van Hollen repeatedly tried to get a simple answer from the nominee. Has the U.S. State Department determined that genocide is happening in South Africa?